Dexter's targets all had one thing in common. They all lived their final day believing they had tomorrow coming. Today, we are looking at the final 24 hours of every big bad Dexter ever eliminated, starting with his own brother, Brian Moser, the ice truck killer. When you think about what happened to the victims of the ice truck killer, you are reminded of the gruesome dismemberment and hopelessness they felt at the hands of a madman. Brian Moser hunted down women and dismembered them for weeks in the attempt to get his brother back to him. Until his death, everything he did was done to get Dexter to remember what happened to them as children. They were blood brothers in more ways than one. Dexter didn't realize it at the time, but the killer he was seeking out was his own brother. After a decades-long pursuit trying to reconnect with Dexter, Brian Moser finally snapped and went on the offensive. He kidnapped Dexter's foster sister Deb and used her as bait to make Dexter come to him. We see in Original Sin that Brian first tried to approach Dexter in a normal way, asking to have a seat at his table and then kindly stepping away when Dexter tells him the seat is taken. But that didn't deter him from stalking Dexter for many years after that. Brian followed Dexter so closely that he knew he was a serial killer. He probably watched Dexter from the shadows so often that he could outline his earlier kills easier than anyone else. Brian knew that Dexter was just like him, in a way, and he wasn't going to let his brother slip away again. Eventually, Dexter did put the pieces together. He realized that the ice truck killer was leading him to what turned out to be their childhood home. When Dexter arrived, he instantly recognized where he was, and he finally recognized his brother, Brian, or as Dexter called him, Biney. Up until that point, he and everyone else believed that Brian was a doctor named Rudy Cooper. That's how Brian tricked Deb into dating him and how he managed to get away with the murders he had been committing all over Miami. In that instance, Dexter realized that all of the clues and all of the conniving was meant to lead him back to his diabolical biological brother. Brian figured that if they were reunited, he and Dexter could finally live their truth as killers. But first, they had to cut ties to Dexter's previous life and fake family by killing Deb together. Unfortunately for Biney, Dexter wasn't about to play his game. In his final 24 hours, Brian Moser completely wasted his time on a pipe dream. He started by coaxing Deb away from work and onto a boat he rented for his fake proposal. He had decked the entire thing out with lights, rose petals, and champagne. That means he spent part of his final day alive wasting tons of money, time, and energy on a plan that wouldn't even pan out in the end. He lured Deb onto the boat he rented and proposed to her before choking her out and kidnapping her. Not the way most girls dream of their proposals. By the time she went missing, Dexter had already figured out that Brian was the ice truck killer and was in hot pursuit. But that is exactly what Brian wanted. Brian stole a car, threw Deb in the trunk next to the body of the man he killed to get it, and drove all the way to the place where he planned to kill her. But his plan wouldn't play out as he'd hoped. The truth is that Brian Moser wasted the final day of his life on a dream that could never be realized. When Dexter saw Deb on a kill table, he knew instantly that he could not kill her. But Brian wasn't having it. He needed Deborah gone if he and Dexter were going to run off into the sunset and live his fantasy life as untouchable serial killer siblings. But Dexter defended Deb, attacked Brian, and the police were closing in. He lived his final day on the run. Finally, he decided to break into Dexter's apartment and kill Deb on his own so Dexter would finally be free of any ties to his foster family and his life with a code. But Dexter anticipated this. He left Deb in the hospital and ambushed Brian, choking him out and carting him off back to his apartment. There, Dexter spoke with him briefly before slitting his throat, finally ending the terrifying murder spree he'd been on. Brian died with the knowledge that his own brother, the person he spent his entire life trying to get back to, rejected him. In a way, his final day was a mirror for his entire life. It boiled down to little more than a frenzied attempt to gain a sense of control and connection, neither of which would ever come to a person as horrible as him. He got exactly what was coming to him. Sadly, it wasn't what he expected. Lila West. Lila West entered Dexter's life when he was in a particularly vulnerable position. After getting Rita's husband sent back to prison for drug use, Dexter lied his way out of the situation by pretending to be an addict himself. Rita accepted the explanation for his erratic behavior, and the rest was history. He entered Narcotics Anonymous, and soon after, Lila became his sponsor. From the beginning, Lila seemed unusually perceptive, able to read Dexter's emotional cues with unsettling precision. Dexter was not used to anyone probing his mind so accurately, so he found her both disarming and intoxicating. Lila presented herself as the only person who truly understood his dark urges and encouraged him to embrace his impulses instead of suppressing or restraining them. But the connection was built on lies and emotional manipulation. As a result, it very quickly morphed from a supportive, mutual relationship into a one-sided obsession that Lila wouldn't let go of. Lila started butting into Dexter's personal life, isolating him from Rita and the kids, while subtly testing how far she could push him. When Dexter tried to pull away, she only dug in deeper, staging emergencies and emotional crises to bring him back in. Her fascination became a fixation. Instead of helping Dexter recover, she wanted to be the one person he relied on. Lila wanted to be the only individual he could not live without. She was unwilling to let him go, and that's when the problems really started. The turning point came when she learned that Sergeant Dokes knew Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher and planned to turn him in. Rather than viewing Dokes as an innocent man or a potential victim, Lila saw him as a threat to Dexter's freedom, and more importantly, to her delusions of a future with him. She decided to act on her twisted sense of loyalty. After tracking Dexter down, we know Dokes ended up trapped in a cage in the Everglades, while Dexter tried to decide what to do with him. Lila found him there and blew up the cabin, killing Dokes instantly. In her mind, this act cemented her role as Dexter's soulmate. Lila believed that she was the one who would eliminate any obstacle for him. She was certifiably nuts. Of course, the murder was actually the final rupture between them, not an act of love that would bring Dexter back. By murdering James, Lila exposed the full extent of her instability and the very real threat she posed, not only to Dexter, but to anyone she fixated on. She destroyed even the illusion that their relationship had ever been anything but volatile and obsessive. After killing Dokes, Lila thought she had a real shot with Dexter. After all, she did it for him. But of course, Dexter was not interested in getting back together with the loony addict who almost ruined his relationship with Rita, framed his friend and coworker Batista for sexual assault, and killed Dokes, a virtually innocent man. Dexter actually planned to kill her for what she'd done, but Lila fled to Paris before he got the opportunity. Unfortunately for her, that wasn't enough to stop him. He tracked her down in Paris, broke into her apartment, and killed her with a knife to the chest. It's not clear exactly what Lila was up to before Dexter tracked her down, but if her time in Miami was any indication, she was probably committing theft, making art of questionable quality, stalking her next victim, and planning to set someplace on fire. Lila was a crazed arsonist, and there is little doubt that she would have lost the firebug just because she moved to France. Given the havoc she created in Dexter's life and the fact that she was willing to do anything up to and including murder to get what she wanted, it's very likely that she was up to her old tricks in a new location. Keep in mind, Lila not only killed Dokes, but she tried to kill Dexter, Astor, and Cody. Not only that, but she set her own apartment on fire to get his attention, and that could have killed plenty of innocent people too. Lila may have been gallivanting around Paris acting as if nothing happened, but the fact is that she was a dangerous maniac who needed to be stopped one way or another. Dexter undoubtedly saved countless people's sanity, relationships, and lives by taking her out. Hopefully she enjoyed her little vacation before Dexter rightfully cut it short. If she really thought that she could outsmart the Bay Harbor Butcher, her final hours were spent just the way she spent most of her adult life, in a haze of overconfident delusion. Miguel Prado. Miguel Prado and Dexter had one of the fastest rise and fall friendships in the entire series. After a short growing period, their bond quickly turned into an explosive disaster. Eventually, Miguel pushed Dexter to the edge, and it completely fell apart. After his brother Oscar died, Miguel believed that Dexter killed the man responsible, a drug dealer named Freebo. Miguel was so grateful that he latched on to Dexter and wouldn't let go. He saw Dexter as someone capable of delivering the kind of justice he desperately wanted to dole out, but never actually could. Dexter, on the other hand, finally felt seen, maybe even admired, and a lot less alone than he usually did. When Miguel didn't stop at a basic friendship, he kept pressing Dexter for deeper truths, pushing into parts of Dexter's life that no one else knew about. Eventually, Miguel manipulated and pressured Dexter into revealing his code, his ritual, and his life as a vigilante serial killer. Pretty soon, he and Miguel were planning murders together, with Dexter serving as the voice of reason, trying to stop Miguel from making increasingly risky moves and killing innocent people, a lot like a role reversal of Harry and Dexter. But Miguel still managed to pervert the entire arrangement and turned their vigilantism into a way to exact personal revenge on his own. Dexter was willing to work with Miguel and train him until Miguel murdered an opposing attorney, Ellen Wolf, just because he didn't want her as a hindrance in court anymore. He completely ignored all of the moral boundaries that Dexter tried to teach him. Dexter realized Miguel had become a dangerous, unpredictable force. Miguel manipulated Dexter, tried to intimidate him, and even outmaneuvered him at times. When Miguel started targeting Lieutenant LaGuerta, Dexter knew he had to go. He saw how crazy Miguel really was, and their brotherly relationship turned into a deadly rivalry. In the end, Miguel's ever-increasing insanity left Dexter with only one option, and he knew he had to eliminate Miguel before any more innocent people died. Miguel spent the last day of his life trying to hunt down and kill his old flame, Maria LaGuerta. She knew that he was responsible for Ellen Wolf's death, and she was going to ruin his life and get him sent to prison if she didn't back off. First, he tried seducing her, despite being married, and when that didn't work, he decided he would just break into her house, murder her, and dump her body in an open grave somewhere like he did to Ellen Wolf. And that wasn't the only thing Miguel was up to on his final day. He knew Dexter would never approve of killing LaGuerta, so Miguel began plotting with a local serial killer, the Skinner, to get Dexter taken out before he could stop him from killing Maria or implicate him in any of the other crimes they'd committed together. But Dexter had other plans for him. Dexter knew that Miguel was targeting Maria. He got Maria out of her house the night Miguel planned to strike and lied in wait for him. From there, Miguel was as good as dead. When Miguel broke into Maria's house, Dexter was ready for him. Soon, Miguel's body was found in a public park, left in plain sight, and made to look like a victim of the Skinner. Miguel had a lot of potential. He was intelligent, driven, and charismatic, but he was completely off the rails and needed to be stopped. He spent the last 24 hours of his life desperate, paranoid, and alone, plotting to kill the people closest to him to save his own skin. No pun intended. Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity Killer. Arthur Mitchell was perhaps the most prolific serial killer Dexter had to face. With over 250 kills all around the country, he was unlike any other target. When Dexter first started vetting Arthur, he was fascinated. From the outside, it looked like Arthur had achieved the perfect arrangement. He was an active serial killer who also maintained a stable family, a long-term job, and he was a pillar of his community. To Dexter, Arthur was the blueprint for living a balanced double life. That pulled Dexter in, and soon he inserted himself into Arthur's world under the alias Kyle Butler. But Arthur operated under intense psychological duress, and that pressure leaked out in terrifying ways. Behind closed doors, his picture-perfect family life was a nightmare of abuse and fear. The more Dexter learned, the more he realized Arthur wasn't a role model. He was a warning. He was just a liar and a killer who ruined his family's life with his insanity. Everything collapsed when Dexter saw the familial abuse up close. Not long after that, Arthur discovered Dexter's real identity, threatened Dexter's family, and struck in the worst way. Arthur knew that his secret was going to be exposed pretty soon. He may not have known everything about Dexter, but Arthur knew he worked for the police and that he could turn him in at any moment. He entered full crisis mode. Arthur dropped his favorite car off at an auto body shop to get it painted a different color. He needed to be incognito, and authorities would have a harder time tracking him if his car looked different. He was planning to go on the run. He raided his own home and stole anything of monetary value from his already traumatized family. He drained his bank accounts as well, managed to escape Dexter's first attempt to catch him, and planned to hit the road and never return to Miami. At some point in the midst of all that, Arthur broke into Deb's apartment thinking it was still Dexter's. Luckily, Deb wasn't home, but the same couldn't be said for Rita. Trinity found Dexter's real house, and it's unclear if he planned to kill Dexter when he got there, but in the end, it was Rita and Harrison he found when he arrived. Trinity spent his final hours of freedom killing Rita to get back at Dexter for blowing up his life. He ambushed her and left her to bleed out in a tub, as he did so many of his other victims, and he left Harrison sitting on the bathroom floor in his mother's blood and bathwater, scared and confused. Arthur picked his car up from the auto shop and headed out of town, but Dexter sabotaged his car, caught him on the side of the road, and finally managed to get Arthur on his kill table. When he finally killed Arthur, Dexter didn't know that Rita was dead. He thought he'd won. Arthur saw the writing on the wall after Dexter ID'd him, and he dealt the heaviest blow possible by killing his wife and traumatizing his child. In the end, neither of them won. Dexter's life was destroyed, and Arthur's life was over. The final 24 hours for the Trinity Killer were as deadly as they were chaotic. He was a deeply disturbed and dangerous monster right up to the very end. The worst part is that he seemed to die peacefully after all of the death and destruction he brought to so many people's lives. His final moments were spent surrounded by his favorite things from his childhood. His Lionel train set, even his favorite song was playing as Dexter killed him. It was better than he deserved, but at least it was over. Jordan Chase. Jordan Chase was a charismatic self-help author and celebrity, but he was a lot more than that. Secretly, he was the ringleader of a brutal group that for years made a sport out of the abduction, torture, and murder of young women around Miami. In the beginning, Dexter was tracking a man named Boyd Fowler. He had no way of knowing at the time how deep everything really went. After taking out Fowler, Dexter realized that the last intended victim, Lumen Pierce, was still alive and saw everything. Dexter tried to send her home and move on with his life, but Lumen was determined to get revenge on the gang of men who tried to kill her and suck Dexter into that process. Realizing that she wasn't going to back down and how disgusting these men were, Dexter reluctantly agreed to help Lumen, and they began tracking everyone involved. It was a long process to find all of them, but Lumen and Dexter managed to get to all of them eventually. But the moment Dexter got close to Chase, things got incredibly complicated. Because of his money and celebrity, Chase seemed untouchable. He wasn't just rich and widely adored, he was surrounded by security at all times, and people would notice if he went missing. And Jordan thrived under pressure, beating the odds and doing whatever he wanted was his entire brand. Jordan knew that Lumen was still alive, and as his friends dropped like flies, he knew they would target him next. But where others might have cracked under the fear, Jordan was solid, weaponizing his influence with poise and even trying to control the police investigation. As Dexter and Lumen systematically eliminated all of the men in his inner circle, Jordan grew more erratic and aggressive. He shifted into survival mode, using every ounce of power to overpower them and regain dominance. After years of deluding himself into thinking he could do anything he wanted, Jordan was stupid enough to think he could kill Dexter, the man who, to Jordan's knowledge, had already killed all of his closest friends with little issue. In his final 24 hours, Jordan Chase was desperately trying to find a way to take Dexter out and get back to his life of killing women in between writing his awful books and tricking people into attending his self-help seminars. He had an ace up his sleeve in the form of his first victim, who he had successfully brainwashed into compliance. He tried to lure Lumen and Dexter to her house to ambush them, but when only Lumen showed up, he had to improvise. He killed the original victim and kidnapped Lumen, used her as bait to get Dexter to show up, and it worked. He managed to get both Dexter and Lumen bound and seemingly at his mercy at the summer camp where it all began for him and the other members of the gang. Unfortunately for Chase, Dexter managed to grab a knife and he used it to get free, and the tables were instantly turned. In the end, Jordan was strapped to Dexter's kill table like everyone else, but it would be Lumen who dealt the deadly blow, and he was vile and arrogant up to the very end. taunting Lumen and refusing to acknowledge that he was finally getting what he deserved for coordinating the murder of 12 women. He was a manipulative and murderous sociopath whose final day was spent fighting for control as he devolved further and further into madness until he was finally put out of his misery. A fitting end for such a horrifically destructive monster. Before you watch any further, I'm happy to finally announce that I'm releasing the first limited drop of my t-shirts. At the start, there are only 100 available, so make sure you buy them while you can at dtmerch.store. Enjoy the video. Travis Marshall, better known as the Doomsday Killer, had to be one of the most mentally disturbed killers Dexter ever faced. When he first crossed paths with Travis, Dexter believed that he was the submissive follower of a man named Professor Geller, a supposedly unhinged religious fanatic who was orchestrating biblically themed murders around Miami to bring about the end of days. Travis came off timid, remorseful, and almost desperate for a way out. Dexter saw him as a victim himself, someone who might be saved from Geller with enough help. That miscalculation made Dexter drop his guard more than he normally would. It worked with Lumen, but it certainly wouldn't work with Travis. The force guiding Travis to kill wasn't external at all. The truth was that he had already killed the professor and stored his body in a freezer. The version of Geller Travis was experiencing when he met Dexter was just a hallucination that he used to justify every other murder he committed. He fed his obsession with what he saw as the beginning of the end by creating the tableaus and trying to scare the people of Miami into buying the idea that the end of days was near. The more Dexter dug, the more he realized Travis wasn't a victim at all. He was the true and only Doomsday Killer. And once Travis sensed Dexter getting close to the truth, he turned on him and saw him as another obstacle to his destiny of fulfilling God's plan for him. Travis grew bolder and more determined than ever to bring about the end of the world. He was already targeting innocent people, including his own sister. He was manipulating the public with the increasingly disturbing apocalyptic rituals. But as Dexter closed in, he saw him as the ultimate threat. He broke into Dexter's house to gather intel, and there he learned that Dexter had a son. He saw a flyer for Harrison's upcoming school event and went there to kidnap him. He planned to sacrifice Harrison during the solar eclipse as the final tableau that would finally bring about the end. Travis went to the tallest building in Miami, killed a cop, and set up a strange altar he planned to use for his final tableau. Harrison was seen as the lamb he had to sacrifice, and the timing had to be perfect. Of course, Dexter tracked them down in the nick of time. He got Harrison to safety and got Travis on his table. The thing is that even though he was a murderer, Travis was certifiably insane. He really believed that he was the catalyst in God's plan to bring about the second coming. As a result, even as he lay on the kill table, he refused to acknowledge that he was wrong, just like the others. He cursed Dexter and died convinced that he was a saint. And Dexter was a beast, interrupting God's plan. His final hours before his demise were filled with confusion and delusion, just like all of the hours leading up to it. In the end, Dexter stopped Travis, putting an end to the doomsday fantasy and proving that his disturbing false prophecy couldn't compete with the cold, harsh reality of a sword to the chest. Isaac Serco. When Dexter killed Victor Baskov, he had no idea that Victor was anything other than a member of the Koshka Brotherhood who had killed Miami Metro Detective Mike Anderson and a young woman he met working at a strip club one night. But in fact, Victor was the secret lover of Isaac Serco, one of the most feared and skilled leaders in the Koshka Brotherhood. He wanted revenge for Victor's death, and he wasn't going to stop until he got it. He used every resource at his disposal to figure out who was responsible, and that led him to Dexter, who immediately became the target. Isaac hunted him down with unyielding determination and even almost killed him for what he'd done to Victor. Isaac stalked Dexter with an eerie calm. He was a skilled hitman himself, and he loved Victor so much that he could not be deterred from his mission to avenge his death. Every move he made pushed Dexter into a corner he wasn't used to. But as the conflict escalated, something unexpected happened. The Brotherhood grew tired of Isaac's vendetta. It was costing them money and getting them investigated more closely by authorities. The other leaders knew he wouldn't back down, so they sent a couple of hitmen to kill him and get rid of the problem once and for all. During their long-standing game of cat and mouse, Isaac recognized that Dexter was a skilled killer in his own right. He needed help if he was going to survive the Brotherhood's attempt to take him out, and he enlisted Dexter. They had a strange kinship, both hiding who they really were from everyone around them, and as a result, Dexter and Isaac gained an understanding for each other. Dexter agreed to help Isaac take out the hitman if Isaac would agree to stop hunting him, and after Isaac kidnapped Dexter's girlfriend Hannah as collateral, they struck a deal. Once they teamed up, they were able to successfully kill the men who were targeting Isaac, but the trouble didn't end there. Even after they dumped the body of the final hitman into the ocean, another one was on their tail. They had thrown their weapons off the side of the boat, as well as a truce, and that left Isaac completely vulnerable. Another member of the Brotherhood tracked them to the port and shot Isaac where he stood. Isaac's final 24 hours were spent running from killers, working with Dexter, the man who killed his partner and best friend, desperately trying to stay alive, despite knowing that his life would never be the same. He'd lost everything, not just Victor, but his ties to the Kashkas and thus all of his power and control. In his final moments, Isaac, as he was bleeding out, had a heartfelt conversation with Dexter about how important it was to love boldly and be honest with the people closest to you. In the end, Dexter mercifully brought Isaac to the area of the ocean where he dumped Victor all those months earlier so they could share a final resting place. His last day was filled with adrenaline, the major high of killing his attacker, and the final low of being killed anyway. It was a roller coaster that ended at the bottom of the bay. On a personal note, Isaac Serco was one of my favorite characters from that season. I thought he did a great job. Rest in peace to the man who played him, Ray Stevenson. Oliver Saxon, the brain surgeon, was a sick freak, but he was also tied directly to the psychiatrist who helped shape Dexter's code, Dr. Evelyn Vogel. That connection turned Dexter's pursuit into something far more intimate than most of the other killers he hunted. Once he learned that the murderer was Dr. Vogel's long-lost son, everything shifted. Saxon carried years of psychological trauma stemming from perceived abandonment. Over time, that bred an intense resentment toward his own mother, who left him in a mental hospital at a young age after he killed his younger brother. Oliver funneled all of that rage into his carefully staged killings to taunt his mother and get back at her for hurting him. Dexter was working as a hunter and protector. He cared about Dr. Vogel and tried to keep her safe from her son, who he knew was a dangerous maniac that wouldn't hesitate to kill anyone if he really wanted to. Oliver tried to get Dexter to back off. He threatened his family and his livelihood, and Dexter couldn't stand for that. The breaking point came when Saxon murdered Vogel right in front of Dexter. After that, it was an all-out war. Dexter cared about Vogel and was more than disgusted by Saxon killing his own mother. If he could do that to his mom, Dexter knew that there was nothing stopping him from hurting his friends and family. He knew he had to take Saxon out as soon as possible. But Saxon wanted to move on. He didn't want to be penned for his previous murders, and he didn't want to be in a standoff with Dexter anymore. He urged Dexter to drop it all and let it go before things got ugly. He was going to leave Miami and move on now that his mother was dead, but Dexter wasn't prepared to leave Saxon alive to continue killing. He submitted footage of Saxon's gruesome crimes to the media to draw him out, and it worked. Saxon saw the news broadcast and knew that Dexter was the one who blew up his spot. After that, he couldn't help himself. He needed to get revenge. After tormenting his own mother for weeks before slitting her throat, Oliver Saxon's final 24 hours were spent trying to get to Dexter while evading police. He made the grave mistake of breaking into Dexter's apartment to try and kill him in his sleep, but Dexter was ready for him. Saxon was a lot of things, but suicidal wasn't one of them. With Deb's gun to his head and a needle in his neck, he knew he was powerless. All of his planning, stalking, and killing culminated in him being strapped to the same chair he had killed so many other people in. But Dexter couldn't do it. He wanted to start a new life with Hannah and Harrison in Argentina, and he wanted to give Deb a win. He left Saxon there bound to that chair and turned him over to Deb, thinking that would be the end of it. But Saxon found a way out, which is what crazy psychopathic serial killers do, and what you should expect. He tricked a marshal into letting him free, killed him, and shot Deb, gravely injuring her. She was still alive. She used the last of her strength to call for help and ended up in the hospital, where she later suffered a stroke that left her brain dead. But that wasn't good enough for Saxon. Before he escaped, Deb gave him a nasty wound by shooting him in the arm. He had to get it stitched. So he broke into a veterinary clinic, forced a worker there to stitch him up, and drive him to the hospital where Deb was sure to be in. He planned to finish her off and go on the run, but before he could get close to her, Dexter and Batista stopped him. For the second time in less than 24 hours, he had a gun to his head. He surrendered and was taken into custody. He wasn't admitting to anything while he was in there, but Dexter didn't need him to. He knew the truth. Under the guise of performing a test for gunshot residue, he managed to get alone with Saxon. Dexter provoked him, and Saxon attacked him with a pen to the arm. Dexter was unfazed and used that same pen to stab his sister's killer in the jugular. He bled out in minutes, and that was it. Everything ended for Oliver with that swift strike from Dexter inside the holding room. The brain surgeon believed he could outmaneuver Dexter, even from jail, but he underestimated just how much Deb's demise would impact Dex. After that, nothing would stop Dexter from killing him. Not a jail cell, not a lack of M99 tranquilizer, not even a camera. Saxon should have never pursued Vogel or Dexter, but he was too arrogant to acknowledge that. And his last day was hell as a result. He was a caged and desperate animal with a thorn in his paw. He sealed his fate when he shot Deborah, and he died on the floor of that holding cell with a hole in his neck. Kurt Caldwell. When Dexter, aka Jim Lindsay, first met Kurt Caldwell, he thought Kurt was just another beloved member of the community in Iron Lake. Kurt was a business owner, a father, and a fixture of the town. And Kurt played that role perfectly. He projected charm and confidence. He represented security and small town values, all to maintain his public reputation. But beneath all of that, he hid a disturbing secret. Kurt was a serial killer who had been abducting vulnerable young women for decades, embalming them and preserving them as trophies beneath his cabin. After Kurt's spoiled son Matt disappeared, he figured out that Dexter was responsible and he wanted revenge. He started getting closer and closer to Dexter's son Harrison, all the while planning to kill him to get back at Dexter. But he'd never get the chance. First, Dexter helped his girlfriend Angela Bishop, the chief of police in Iron Lake, connect Kurt to the missing girls case. When even that couldn't keep Kurt behind bars, he went on the offensive. He wanted Kurt away from his son and out of his life. Kurt was a killer, and Dexter kills killers, so he had no problem eliminating him, but Kurt made it more appealing than most. Targeting Dexter's family is a great way to end up on a kill table, and that would be exactly where Kurt found himself. After he tried to shoot Harrison down like a dog in the snow, there was no saving him. In his final hours, Kurt was doing everything he could to get back at Dexter. He tried to kill Harrison. He had Dexter kidnapped so he could watch it happen. He burned down Dexter's cabin in an attempt to draw him and Harrison outside to be gunned down by him. He took time out to leave Chief Bishop an anonymous note indicating Dexter and his son's death, complete with the screws from Matt's surgery that couldn't be destroyed in the incinerator that Dexter used to destroy Matt's body. He wanted to ruin Dexter's life, and he almost did, but he wouldn't live to see the fallout. Kurt returned to his remote cabin after he realized that Dexter wasn't inside his burning house, but instead in the trophy room he had managed to hide for so many years. That is where Harrison and Dexter ambushed him. They knocked him out, took him back to his precious trophy room, and killed him. He never saw it coming. He envied the relationship Harrison and Dexter had, and he died knowing that his sick past was going to be discovered by all of the people in Iron Lake, the people who used to adore him. He wasted his last day seeking revenge and self-gratification, and suffered a death he never saw coming. Kurt wasted his final days trying to outsmart Dexter, but when all was said and done, his body and his legacy as a small-town hero went up in flames. Leon Prater. Leon Prater was the megalomaniac billionaire Dexter met after he left Iron Lake to find Harrison in New York. Leon built his empire from the ground up, but once he got a taste of power, he never let go. His parents were killed by a drunk driver when he was just a child, and from there, his obsession with serial killers was born. He used a great deal of his money to track them down and make them beholden to him. Leon gave them all strict rules along with large sums of money, a gravy train that would end if they didn't do exactly as he said. That is how he met Dexter. He wanted to secure a different killer, a man named Ronald Red Schmidt, who had taken to killing rideshare drivers around New York to avenge his father's suicide. Instead, his henchman, Charlie, picked up Dexter, believing him to be the killer that Leon had in his crosshairs. But Dexter had already killed Ronald, and he planned to do the same to every other killer Leon had recruited. And that's exactly what he did. One by one, Dexter killed almost all of them. Only one, Al Walker, was able to get away before Dexter could take him out. He may have gotten to most of them, but unfortunately for Dexter, he was also being hunted. His old colleague, Angel Batista, was hot on his trail. He knew that Dexter was the real Bay Harbor Butcher, and he was going to unravel his fake life in New York and bring him to justice or die trying. Over time, Angel dug deeper into Dexter's new life in New York. He found his son, his apartment, spoke with his landlord, and even set the local authorities onto him. When none of that was enough to shake Dexter, Angel started following him on his own, planning to catch Dexter in the act. But Dexter was too keen to allow that to happen, and eventually even the police stopped being of any assistance. That is when Angel got desperate. He used the photos he'd taken of Dexter meeting with Leon Prater to his advantage. He went to see Leon and let him know that Dexter was most likely going to try and kill him. But everything fell apart from there. In his final 24 hours, Leon was worried about a few things. He had to finish organizing and preparing for his annual gala honoring the New York Police Department. But given Angel's visit, he also had a larger problem on his hands. He needed to get to the bottom of whatever Dexter was up to by infiltrating his group, and fast. Prater understood everything Batista told him about Dexter. Charlie messed up in thinking that she brought Red to the dinner that first night. Instead, one of the most prolific serial killers was in his midst all this time, and no one was the wiser. Leon is a proud man, and he didn't appreciate being played like that, no doubt. But any anger he had towards Dexter was overshadowed by his desire to possess and control him. As he set his staff to work preparing the gala, he went to work tying up Angel, bringing him down to his vault and tricking Dexter into thinking that he still had no clue about his real identity. He knew Dexter wanted to meet to discuss how Charlie confronted and threatened Harrison, so Leon used their previous arrangement as a ploy to get Dexter in front of him. He plotted with Charlie to force Dexter into a position where he had no choice but to kill Batista in front of them to cement his loyalty to keep his life of anonymity. But Dexter wasn't going to kill Batista. When Dexter arrived, Leon got him down to the vault no problem, and all the while, Dexter thought he had the upper hand. But in no time, Charlie's gun was on his scalp, and Dexter was praying to a god he didn't believe in, just hoping to stay alive. Angel was his friend, and perhaps more importantly, he didn't fit the code at all. So Dexter freed Batista, thinking they could work together to escape Leon, but he didn't react how Dexter had hoped. Batista immediately attacked Dexter as soon as the restraints were cut off, and as he tried to strangle Dexter to death for all he'd done to the people he loved, Leon shot him in the back. Batista was as good as dead, and this time, Leon was the killer. For the first half of his last day alive, Leon thought he was going to get away with everything, just like he always had. He was showing face at his gala, pretending to be a philanthropist with a heart of gold, while Dexter was trapped in his vault with nothing more than Batista's decaying body, a dying cell phone, and 3 days to live at most. Leon thought he'd won, but soon enough, Dexter called Harrison, had him get into the gala under false pretenses, and work his way towards Dexter so he could get free and take care of Leon. The plan worked initially, but fell apart in no time. Unfortunately for Dexter, Leon spotted Harrison soon after they broke him out of the vault and used him to bring Dexter back. Much like Kurt, Leon was going to kill Harrison in front of Dexter to get back at him for lying to him and putting him at risk of exposure. He was still grappling for a power position in the hours leading up to his death, and he was just as stupid as all the others to believe he actually had it. But in the end, Harrison used a fleeting diversion to inject Leon with M99. He was knocked out instantly, and Dexter had him on the same kill table he used to kill his own brother, Brian, years prior. As the attendees of the gala chanted his name just a few stories below the vault, Leon laid bound in plastic frantic, begging for his life in the most pathetic way. He threatened Harrison, and we all know how well that tends to go for people. Dexter wasn't going to be swayed by his pleas or promises. He killed Leon then and there after telling him that he wasn't even worth being taken as a trophy for his box of blood slides. None of Leon's tricks, not his wealth, influence, or charm, were enough to save him. He'd spent so many years controlling others, only to find himself completely helpless in the final moments of his life. What's worse is that Dexter alerted everyone to the existence of the vault, exposing Prater as the demented creep he really was. He wasn't getting peace in life or death after he went up against Dexter and Harrison, but he tricked himself into thinking he could find his way back on top right up to the very end. His final day was filled with murder, pointless power plays, losing his head of security, and finally, with the realization that money can't buy everything. He was thrown into a watery tomb and exposed. Leon's life and legacy amounted to nothing. Dexter made sure of that. So many killers thought they could outsmart Dexter, but crossing Dexter is like jumping feet first into quicksand. The longer you're in it and the more you fight it, the closer you get to your own demise. The best thing for all of them would have been to avoid him altogether, but some combination of undue confidence and rage drew them deeper and deeper into his muck until finally they took their last breath. Dexter took a few blows personally by becoming entangled with these monsters, but he always walked away. Unlike them, his final day is yet to be seen. If you liked this video, check out our series on Dexter versus famous real-life serial killers like the Zodiac Killer, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and more. And this video is sponsored by the color red. If you're seeing it, go ahead and slash that subscribe button. I promise you'll feel better. Thanks for watching.